Hi, my name is Elizabeth Langer. I'm the Outreach and Widening Participation Coordinator for the Cambridge Law faculty, and I'm excited to welcome you all here today to talk about applying to Cambridge Law. Uh, so during this presentation, unfortunately, it's going to be quite brief, so I won't really have time for questions. But I will share my email at the end, and so if there's anything that I can offer you, please do get in touch. So I'm going to bring up my presentation now. As I said, this session is going to be primarily about the process of applying to Cambridge Law. Throughout the process, there are a series of steps that I've outlined on the screen. So first, obviously, you're going to choose your course. It seems like a lot of you will probably be choosing law, considering that you're here today, but do think about what options excite you. Next, we're going to talk about choosing a college versus making an open application. You'll also look at the admissions assessment and arrangements, which for us is the LNAT. You'll register for and take the LNAT, and then you will submit your UCAS application by the deadline, which this year is the 15th of October. And so that deadline, the 15th of October, is for entry in 2025. You will then, a week after submitting your application, you'll receive your My Cambridge section, which has a little bit more about you. And then if you are successful in being invited to interview, you'll do so in December before receiving a decision in January. So a little bit about our course. The course itself, the BA in Law, is a three-year course. And throughout that, you're going to take 7 foundational subjects. Those are criminal law, law of torts, constitutional law, land law, law of contract, and equity and EU law. And the way that these are allocated is that throughout your course, you're going to have 3 years. The first one, all of the compulsory topics are part of those 7. And then the other ones, you'll have the opportunity to take some additional courses throughout. So one really interesting thing is how much you can really shape the course around you and around your interests. While you do have some compulsory courses, you also have the opportunity to take some elective modules that really interest you. So you can take everything from animal rights to landlord and tenant rights to criminology, sentencing, and the penal system. You also have the opportunity in your 3rd year to take a dissertation. One interesting thing about Cambridge that might help you decide if you're deciding between Oxford and Cambridge is that we have our exams at the end of each year rather than in the middle of your 1st year and at the end of your 3rd year. So if that's how you might want to be assessed, do consider that. The way that we split up our teaching and learning is into 3 sorts of ways of learning. So the big one is lectures, which is what you expect when you are going to university. That's bringing everybody in to talk about the foundations of a topic from people who are world leading in their field. So they're going to introduce you to the basics of what you're talking about. Then you go on and you have supervisions, which is with other people in the faculty or in your college. And these are very small group settings, which is something that's very interesting and unique. It might be one-on-one or even just 2-on-1 with, again, people who are very familiar with the topics that you'll be talking about. And so the way that this works is that you'll be able to speak to them about questions that you might have, and they'll ask you questions that you'll work through together to make sure that you really understand what you've been learning in your lectures. Additionally, you'll have the option of self-study, which is things like reading, making preparations for your essays and writing those essays, as well as the potential for you to do the dissertation in your 3rd year. So that's going to make up the bulk of what you do. And it really is based around you and your self-motivation to be able to learn more, to bolster what you're learning in your lectures and your supervisions. If you want to learn a little bit more about what your time at Cambridge might look like if you're studying law, I would recommend these resources, the alternative prospectus. We have days in the live videos, as well as some student perspectives that can really give you some good insight into what you might be learning and how you might be learning. One aspect of Cambridge that is particularly almost unique is that it is a collegiate university, and that can be quite daunting for people sometimes. Maybe they don't really understand what it means, but the way that I like to think about it is that the university is split up into a few different umbrellas. And so the largest umbrella is the University of Cambridge, which encapsulates everything. And then underneath that, you have a few further things. So you have the faculty, which is going to be offering some teaching. And it's a building with, a big library that everybody can come to. You might all have your lectures here. And then you also have the college, which there are 31 Cambridge colleges. And each of them is kind of like its own little university underneath the big umbrella of the larger Cambridge University. The college is really where you're going to eat, sleep, socialize. You'll have all sorts of activities that you can take part in. You'll be able to take part in the JCR, the Junior Combination Room. And it's going to be really the place that you're living for 3 years. So once you decide on that, you can kind of start to think about what you might want. And then the university does more of the logistical things. So it's making sure that everybody's learning the same things, that everybody's getting the same lecture quality, as well as setting marks and examinations, as well as administering exams. So as the screen notes, there are 31 colleges overall. 29 of those accept undergraduate students, and 3 accept mature students. Those are Wolfson, St. Edmunds, and Hughes Hall, and 2 are women only. That's Murray Edwards and Newnham. So really start to consider what you might want. And one important thing to note about the colleges is that these are the colleges should be your first point of contact during the admissions process. So the colleges are the ones who are actually giving out the offers, and they're the ones that you're going to be applying directly to. So if you have any questions about maybe your qualifications, the colleges are the best people to direct those to. So a question that I get quite frequently is about how to choose a college. And a lot of people say which is the best college for law, or I suppose ultimately which is the best college for medicine. And for me personally, I don't think that that's the way that I would recommend approaching this question, because ultimately all of the colleges are going to give you the same quality of education, and they're going to give you the same type of education. What really differs is the kind of living that you would want to do and how you want to spend your time. So the college, for me, is the place where you are. So it's the place that's your home. And all of them are going to offer the same thing. So you'll be able to live there, they'll feed you, they'll give you activities, you'll have libraries, green spaces. But the things that might be beneficial for you if you're still thinking about where you might want to apply are thinking of the areas where they differ. So start to think about whether maybe you want a large or a small college, whether you want accommodation that's on site or maybe a bit further away, whether you want an en-suite, whether you want an old or a new college, one that's really modern or more traditional, whether you want lots of green space or maybe one that's right across from the main Sainsbury's, as well as whether you want one that has, a lot of societies, or one that maybe is close to the gym if you like that, or maybe it's close to the river if you want to take up rowing. I think that another thing that I would recommend is that it doesn't necessarily need to be, an equation that gets you to where you want to be. Ultimately, it might just be a gut feeling. This is an anecdote, but a friend of mine ended up applying to the college that they're at because on the prospectus, they saw a picture of a snowman in the main court, and they decided that that was the college for them, and they didn't want to look any further. And somebody else chose Christ's College merely because it's the first one alphabetically. So definitely take a look at all the colleges, look at different options, different types of colleges, but know that the college that you're a member of will not be a make or break for your experience at Cambridge. Because another option that you have is to make an open application, which is where you don't choose a college at all. You let your application be considered by any college. And the only time that I would recommend not using this option is if you have any access concerns or mobility concerns. So the university has some great resources if you are a student with those kind of concerns who might want to make sure that the college is able to give you the accommodations that you need. Again, I would also recommend looking at the alternative prospectus, as it will give you a lot of great information about people's experiences at Cambridge, maybe some more things that you might care about in terms of very specific things. How good is the Wi-Fi? How often do you have formal hall? I think the one for St. Catherine's College has one critique, which is that the lawn is clipped too closely, and the dining hall is pine paneled, which they don't like. So, some really, really minute concerns, but definitely take a look at that, and it'll give you some good insight into all of the different colleges. Speaking more to the admissions process, I'm going to be speaking about the academic requirements, our admissions test, which is the LNAT, the UCAS application, and the interview. So ultimately, at Cambridge, we're not looking for anyone in particular. We're looking for the brightest, best students, irrespective of your backgrounds. The way that we judge this is through your academic ability as well as your potential, your ability to satisfy any subject requirements, which you'll note as we go on that we don't have. And whether you're genuinely interested in the subject, is this something that you care enough to study it in depth as essentially a full-time job for 3 years, if not more, as well as whether we think that you would be a good fit for the law program. So the way that we are assessing our applicants is through your academic record, your personal statement, your school or college reference, any written work which is submitted, which I don't believe that any except for one college requires that, as well as your performance in the LNAT, any contextual data that you provide to us, and your interview if you make it to the interview stage. However, I would really like to note that the way that we assess applicants is really holistic. So we're looking at you as a whole person rather than boiling you down to, the number of A levels that you take, or, what you're doing in your outside life. So we really do consider you as a whole person and as a whole applicant. So the academic requirements that we do have are we typically give the typical offers that we give are A-star AA for A levels or 40 to 42 points for IB. And I will note that we do not have any subject requirements. So you could have studied any sorts of creative, essay-based, or STEM subjects. If you can come up with a combination, we've definitely seen it. And any of these would give you really good background and skills to help you apply and to help you in your future law degree. So, maybe that's the writing skills and the critical reading that you would get from an essay-based subject, or maybe you want to be able to really think about a problem logically like a lawyer, which you can get a lot of that from a STEM subject. Maybe you want to be able to have an agile approach to thinking and to think creatively, which creative subjects definitely offer. And I will note also that you do not have to have taken law at A level. Some people have, some people haven't, but we do understand that not everybody has that available to them. And to that effect, we also, if you are taking an EPQ, we see that as a really great way to further your research skills, but we don't consider it one way or another because, again, we do understand that not everyone has access to an EPQ. So definitely use that as a good way to explore the law, but we won't weight it and we won't consider it either negatively or positively in your application. The LNAT is the way that we assess our applicants. So it's the Law National Aptitude Test, which you have to sit before you apply to Cambridge Law. It's going to test your verbal reasoning, your comprehension, your inductive and deductive reasoning, and your analytical capabilities through a multiple choice and an essay section. So you're going to sit that over the course of 2 hours and 15 minutes. And then your scores, your multiple choice will be available to us immediately, and then we will mark your essays. We are not the only ones who are using the LNAT. Oxford also uses it, as do a number of other universities in the UK and internationally. And I would really, really stress that this is not at all a test of your intelligence. So if you don't do as well as you expected, that's not because of how intelligent you are or how smart you are. It's a test of how much you have an aptitude for the law, as the name would suggest. And while you can do some preparation in terms of looking at practice tests online, ultimately, this is something that you're not going to really be able to prep that much for. So I would definitely recommend perhaps doing some of those, but don't stress too much about doing all of the right preparation one way or another. So a few things to note about the LNAT is that there is a 75 pound fee, but I would really recommend looking at the website to check any of the bursaries that are offered by Pearson, because obviously that's not something that's necessarily accessible to all applicants. And you can find out more about examples, how to book, where the centers are on www.lnat.ac.uk. So the next step, once you've done all that, you've considered the course, the college, you've taken the LNAT, and then it's the submission of your UCAS application. So again, this year, the date is October 15th. And a few things to note. Obviously, this is all a lot about you, and the UCAS application gives us the opportunity to see who you are beyond scores from school or from the LNAT. In the personal statement, my best advice to you would be to write from your perspective, to be honest about who you are. Don't try to lie and say that you've read books that you haven't read, because if those come up in the interview, then at best you look like you don't know what you're talking about, and at worst you'll look disingenuous. But make sure that you're talking about why law is interesting to you, as well as what you've done in the past that would help you to have a successful law degree and potentially a successful law career. What you've studied and the skills that they've given you as well. That's the really key part. If you're doing things, like you're high level in badminton, or, you play the saxophone really well, that's really great to add. And it might be able to give us some evidence of your ability in time management and that sort of thing. But ultimately, we're not going to be taking that into account. And it won't be taken into account in our considerations. What we do take into account is what we call supercurricular exploration. So that's things like looking into the law and things about the law, seeing where you exist alongside it, where the law exists in the world, and really diving into that. So we have a lot of resources on our website that can give you good places to start. But my best recommendation would be to just start to read the newspaper, look at the news and see where the law exists within that. Obviously, there's quite a lot going on in the world right now. And if you just start to think about where the law exists alongside all of those current events, that can be a really good place to start to think about why the law interests you. And you can bolster that with readings of, there are lots of podcasts and online blogs, as well as some really great resources of articles and books that we can recommend on our website. Ultimately, a good thing to note is that you do not have to have any work experience, because again, we know that isn't accessible to everybody. But the one thing that I would recommend it, because it is produced by us, is our online course, Exploring Law. So you can look at that on our website. It's a completely free 6-week online course that can give you a really good sense of whether law is right for you, and also can give you a jumping off point so that you can start to think about how you might want to start your supercurricular exploration. And then a few other things you can do are just, going to the local court and starting to think about different ways in which the law, again, happens around you. So once you've gone through that, you may be invited to interview. The interview will happen. It's different based off of each college. You'll be interviewed by the college maybe the college that you've applied to, but you could be interviewed by a different college if your application was pooled, which means that it was given to another college for consideration. So the important thing to note is that there's no standard way for you to know what your interview will look like. But a really good resource that I would recommend is called Inside Uni, and it's a website that's kind of compiled reports of different people's interview experiences at different colleges at both Oxford and Cambridge over all different subjects. So it's a really good way to kind of see a broad view of what you might be asked, so you can start to think about that. So you could have anywhere from 1 to 3 interviews, anywhere from 20 to about 45 minutes. And these will be conducted by, again, people who are experts in the field. And my best advice to you is that you don't be concerned. I know that can be stressful to say, and that doesn't help at all. But realistically, what these are looking for is that they're looking to get to know you. You don't need to know everything about the law before you go in. It's just looking to see how you think. And whether you're genuinely interested in the law, or whether this is just something that maybe you would get a year in and then drop out. Again, we're looking for people who will be a really good fit for Cambridge Law. So some of the things that we're looking for are your enthusiasm, whether you can think through problems with clarity, and whether you can voice what you think very well. So the best ways to prep for this are, I would recommend, again, as we were talking about for the supercurricular readings, really see what's happening in the world, stay on top of current events and where the law exists around those. And then also look back on your application. These will either be in person or online. The in-person colleges are listed on the screen. The rest of them, will be held online, and the colleges will send you a really good description of how the interview will be conducted if you are invited to interview. So the final step is that in January, the decisions will come out. And so obviously there are 2 different ways that this could go. The first is that you're made an offer. You might be offered to go to your college, as I mentioned, the college that you applied to, or you could be pooled to a different college, and you'll be given either a conditional offer or an unconditional. Unconditionals are really only given to people who've already completed their studies, and who don't have to kind of show any more academic progression. And as I mentioned, the typical offer is A star AA. The other option is that you might be unsuccessful. However, I would really urge anybody who's considering applying to not be deterred by this potential outcome. There are lots of people who didn't think they would get in who did, other people who thought they might get in but didn't, and then everybody in between. And ultimately, the only way that you can know what's going to happen is if you apply. And we can only offer places to people who do try and people who do send us in their application. So just to close out, I have a few resources here, including our faculty website, the university website, Inside Uni, which I noted earlier, as well as our social media, which is a really great place to keep on top of the events that we're offering, and the Future Learn Exploring Law course, which I mentioned earlier, and I would absolutely recommend. It's actually currently running right now. I don't have time for any questions, unfortunately, but if you do have any questions about the content, about law at Cambridge, or about anything else, please, please, please do reach out to me. My email is outreach@law.cam.ac.uk, and my name is Elizabeth. If you have any questions, again, I'm happy to field those, and either I'll try to answer them or I'll give them to somebody who can. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your emails. And good luck in your applications.